When World War II erupted in the Pacific in late 1941, the Americans were forced to confront an enemy whose fighting style was entirely different from that on the European front. The Japanese Empire not only possessed a powerful navy capable of launching the stunning attack on Pearl Harbor, but also a disciplined army with combat experience honed through years of campaigns in China. In the eyes of American soldiers, the Japanese were both fearsome and enigmatic. They fought tenaciously, disregarded death, and were willing to close in for bayonet or even traditional sword combat. Unlike the German soldiers in Europe, who relied on machine gun firepower and mechanized tactics, the Japanese in the Pacific jungles compelled their opponents to be cautious through suicide attacks under cover of darkness, sudden banzai charges, and ambushes in dense forests. In the early days on Guadalcanal in 1942, when the U.S. Marines first landed on the island, many young, inexperienced soldiers were shocked by the bold and sometimes recklessly daring tactics of the Japanese. They did not hesitate to charge American positions, disregarding machine gun fire or artillery. What had been drilled back home, mainly long-range rifle marksmanship, coordinated machine gun and artillery fire, seemed insufficient against an opponent who glorified close combat. In Japanese military thinking, fighting hand-to-hand or within a few dozen meters was where the spirit of Bushido and indomitable will were most clearly demonstrated. For this reason, Japanese officers were trained in the use of the samurai sword, and soldiers were drilled in bayonet charges. In many cases, killing the enemy with a blade was considered more honorable than eliminating them from afar. This created heavy psychological pressure on American soldiers. Many began to realize that the M1903 Springfield or M1 Garand rifles, though powerful and accurate, did not always guarantee safety in close-quarters jungle combat. A long, heavy rifle requiring careful aim became cumbersome when an enemy suddenly lunged out of the undergrowth only a few meters away. Even the light bar, praised for its firepower, could struggle to respond to Japanese soldiers closing in under the cover of darkness. What the Americans lacked at the time was a specialized weapon for extremely close range, capable of delivering dense, instant fire to repel sudden attacks. In this context, the shotgun, a weapon considered common in the 1930s and often associated with hunters, police or riot control units, suddenly found its place in modern warfare. In fact, the U.S. had used shotguns in World War I, bringing the Winchester Model 1897 and Model 1912 to the European front. The Germans strongly opposed this, labeling the shotgun inhumane due to the devastating damage of buckshot at close range. But in the Pacific jungles, this very characteristic became an advantage. Even during preparations for amphibious operations, many Marine officers recommended introducing the shotgun. They understood that jungle combat, with limited visibility and tight terrain, would be vastly different from mechanized warfare in North Africa or Europe. On Guadalcanal, Bougainville, and New Georgia, these concerns quickly became reality. The Japanese were not only skilled at camouflage and concealment, but also persistent in conducting night raids against American defensive lines. In the darkness, at distances of just a few dozen steps, the Americans' long-range firepower advantage was largely nullified. Soldiers had to rely on their senses, reflexes, and personal weapons to survive. The Winchester Model 12, a pump-action shotgun developed in the early 20th century, was chosen as a practical solution. With a sturdy design, short barrel for easy maneuvering, and the capability for slam fire, rapid consecutive shots by holding the trigger and pumping, the M12 could fire 6 rounds in seconds. Each .00 buckshot shell contained 9 large lead pellets, creating a deadly spread capable of sweeping clean any target within 20-30 meters. For soldiers tense in the night, a single burst was enough to halt an advancing squad of Japanese troops. Beyond the battlefield, the shotgun also provided psychological reassurance for American soldiers. Many veterans recalled that simply holding an M12 gave them confidence that they had a reliable tool to face whatever the Japanese might throw at them. While Japanese soldiers relied entirely on spirit and the blade, Americans found assurance in technology and firepower. The clash between these two opposing military philosophies began in the first days on Guadalcanal, and the shotgun quickly proved its value. It is noteworthy that the shotgun was never widely issued. Only about 60,000 Model 12s were produced during World War II, a small number compared to millions of Garands or carbines. Yet this scarcity made the shotgun a specialized weapon, often issued to spearhead troops, jungle scouts, or units clearing bunkers. In their hands, a familiar hunting gun became a fearsome instrument, catching the Japanese, unprepared to face it, at a disadvantage. The introduction of the Winchester M12 in the Pacific Theater was more than a simple addition to the arsenal. It reflected a fundamental difference between two military cultures. Japan entered the war with deep faith in spirit and tradition, while the U.S., with its abundant industry, was willing to exploit any weapon proven effective. This pragmatic view that a hunting shotgun could become a battlefield weapon demonstrated American adaptability. While the Japanese could not imagine a spread of buckshot tearing through dense foliage, the Americans turned it into reality on every island they captured. Thus, the emergence of the Winchester Model 12 trench gun in the Pacific is not just the story of a weapon, but of the clash between two philosophies of warfare, one valuing spirit, the other trusting technology and firepower. In this confrontation, the seemingly outdated shotgun found its golden moment, becoming one of the most formidable close combat weapons for the U.S. military in World War II. When people talk about the Winchester Model 12 in World War II, they often emphasize one feature that made its reputation: the ability to slam fire. But before diving into that special mechanism, it's important to review the weapon's development and overall engineering to understand why the U.S. military trusted it for the harsh conditions of the Pacific Theater. The Winchester Model 12 is a pump-action shotgun. Introduced in 1912 by the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, it was an improvement on earlier designs like John Browning's Winchester Model 1897, which had been used in World War I. The M12 was built with a philosophy of reliability, smoothness, and durability, so much so that shooters of the era nicknamed it the perfect repeater. The gun uses a sliding fore-end pump to feed shells from a tubular magazine beneath the barrel, a simple but effective system that allows rapid follow-up shots without removing the finger from the trigger. The most distinctive feature of the M12 trench gun variant is its shortened 20-inch barrel, compared with the 26-30-inch barrels common on civilian models. The short barrel made the weapon easier to maneuver in confined spaces, trenches, jungle, caves, or even inside bases. The shortened barrel was paired with a tubular magazine holding 6 12-gauge shells. With one in the chamber, the total capacity reached 7 rounds. At engagement ranges of 20-30 meters, that was more than sufficient for a shotgun-armed soldier to hold a line. To adapt to combat use, the Model 12 received several battlefield-oriented modifications. The most notable was a metal heat shield wrapped around the barrel to reduce the risk of the shooter burning their hands during rapid fire. Under combat conditions, firing 6 or 7 rounds in a few seconds was not uncommon, and a red-hot barrel could pose a real hazard. This simple safeguard reflected careful adaptation of a sporting firearm for war. The trench gun also carried a bayonet lug at the muzzle, so troops could mount the M1917 bayonet, both a practical fallback and a symbolic feature. If ammunition ran out, the shotgun could still serve as an effective close-quarters weapon. What made the Model 12 legendary, however, was its trigger mechanism. Unlike many later pump-action designs that include a trigger disconnector, forcing the shooter to release the trigger between pumps, the Model 12 allowed the shooter to hold the trigger down and fire again simply by cycling the pump, a capability known as slam fire. In combat, slam fire turned the shotgun into a near-submachine gun at point-blank ranges, spewing a torrent of buckshot almost impossible to counter. An experienced shooter could empty the 6-round magazine in under 3 seconds, sending more than 50 large pellets toward a target in close quarters. With that kind of firepower, even the bravest attacking group stood little chance if they closed into the shotgun's lethal zone. Gauge. 0 buckshot was the most common ammunition used with the M12. Each shell contained 9 pellets about 8.4 millimeter in diameter. When fired, the pellets spread into a pattern that created an intense density of fire. At 10-15 meters, the spread remained concentrated enough to be lethal with a single shot. At longer ranges of 25-30 meters, the pattern dispersed. But that could be advantageous against moving targets or in darkness. The shooter did not need perfect aim. Simply pointing the gun towards sound or movement was often enough to inflict serious damage. Besides buckshot, the U.S. forces also used slugs, single, large projectiles for breaching wood doors, thin walls, or for attacking fortified positions. This ammunition variety made the M12 a flexible weapon across different combat scenarios. The gun's construction also reflected American craftsmanship. The receiver and major components were steel-forged, and the stock was typically walnut, sturdy, durable, and familiar to many troops who came from rural backgrounds. Many soldiers reported that holding an M12 felt like holding a hunting gun from home, a familiarity that offered psychological comfort in brutal conditions. That same durability helped the weapon withstand the wet, muddy, and salty environments of tropical islands and coral atolls. The Model 12 did have drawbacks. Fully loaded, it weighed roughly 3.54 kilo, which added to the burden on long marches. Shotgun shells themselves were heavier and bulkier than rifle ammunition. 8 Garand cartridges weigh about 0.3 kg, whereas 8 12-gauge shells could weigh roughly twice that. Thus, a shotgunner could not carry as much ammunition as a Garand or carbine rifleman. For this reason, shotguns were issued to specialized roles, point men on patrols, bunker clearers, or fortification guards, rather than to entire units. Another limitation was effective range. Beyond 40-50 meters, the stopping power and accuracy of buckshot fall off markedly, placing the M12 at a disadvantage compared with the M1 Garand or even the Thompson submachine gun. But in the Pacific's jungle combat, engagements rarely occurred at such distances. Visibility was often limited by foliage, terrain, and darkness, conditions in which the shotgun's limitations became strengths. It was designed for tight spaces where a single blast could mean life or death. Besides the trench gun with its heat shield and bayonet lug, the U.S. also produced riot gun variants, 18 20-inch barrels without heat shield or bayonet lug, and training guns for instruction. Still, the trench gun was the most common model in the Pacific because it combined the combat features soldiers needed. The M12's modularity, easy disassembly, cleaning, and parts replacement was crucial in tropical climates where weapons rapidly corroded without diligent maintenance. In short, every detail of the Winchester Model 12 reflects American wartime pragmatism. The short barrel for maneuverability, heat shield for sustained fire, bayonet lug for close combat, and the slam fire capability for devastating close-range volleys, all combined to produce a specialized weapon that met real battlefield needs more effectively than any theoretical manual. It's no coincidence that many Marine veterans describe the M12 as a savior during long nights on Guadalcanal or Okinawa. Viewed in retrospect, the Model 12 did not replace other weapons but supplemented the U.S. arsenal with a unique option. The Garand handled long and medium ranges. The Thompson provided sustained fire at medium ranges. The Bar offered suppressive support, and the M12 protected immediate front lines and cleared threats lurking in darkness. Thanks to this clear division of roles, the U.S. could exploit the strengths of each weapon type. In its role, the Winchester Model 12 trench gun delivered a terrifying power that unprepared opponents found dreadful. From a technical standpoint, the M12 was neither the most modern nor the most mass-produced weapon of the era. Yet the combination of solid design, a distinctive mechanism, and suitable ammunition made it the icon of close-quarters combat in World War II. If the Garand was the backbone of the U.S. infantry, the Model 12 was the iron fist at short range, a weapon whose pumped cadence alone could send shivers down the spine of an enemy. When the Winchester Model 12 was issued to units responsible for patrolling, guarding, and clearing lines on the Pacific Front, its influence on how battles were fought was not a revolutionary strategic shift, but rather a highly practical change in small unit and squad tactics. The M12's impact showed itself in many ways, from immediate reactions to ambushes, nighttime defensive dispositions, and methods for clearing caves and fortifications, to psychological shifts between defender and attacker. And all of these changes sprang from a simple fact. A pump-action shotgun can spray dense buckshot in an instant, turning a few paces into a lethal zone. First, in ambushes and close jungle engagements, the Model 12 fundamentally altered how a small team responded to sudden threat. In the Pacific's tropical jungles, sightlines are often blocked by trees, undergrowth, and uneven terrain. An enemy can close to a few meters before being noticed. In that environment, long-range fire from rifles or even submachine guns offers the attacker time to aim and deploy, whereas a weapon that delivers wide-area fire immediately has the advantage. A soldier with an M12, especially when using slam fire technique, could respond with a spread of buckshot covering the attack axis in seconds. The result: isolated rushes or small ambush teams were suppressed on the spot, reducing the chance that a unit would collapse during the initial chaos. This effect was even more pronounced in night defense duties. Drawing on training and experience, Japanese forces often employed night attacks, stealthy infiltration, or sudden banzai charges to break defensive lines. In such scenarios, the ability to fire towards sound and movement without precise aiming was vital for survival. The shotgun enabled point-blank fire by noise and motion, giving the advantage to the man with wide pattern fire. Consequently, many of the Japanese tactics that depended on quiet approach and close fighting were neutralized. The tendency to close silently and engage in melee now risked being met by sweeping buckshot. Units quickly learned that placing shotgun teams at critical positions, flanks, narrow approaches, or night strong points increased deterrence and reduced the odds of a successful night attack. A practical outcome was the formation and refinement of shotgun teams. Small squads trained for close quarters tasks such as route clearance, raids, and counter-infiltration. These teams typically combined 2 shotgun gunners, 1 or 2 light machine or bar gunners for support, and several grenadiers or demolitions men to deal with fortifications. In principle, the shotgun shattered confined space and created safe passages for teammates to advance, while machine guns or supporting fire engaged threats at range or concentrated targets. This coordination demonstrated that the shotgun did not act alone, but was a component of an effective close combat system. Shotgun employment techniques also evolved rapidly on the job. Skip shooting, ricochet shots off rock or cave walls, firing into the ground to exploit bullet splash and extend the lethal zone against crawling enemies, firing to sound rather than waiting for visual identification, and switching between buckshot and slugs depending on the target, buckshot for personnel and moving targets, slugs for breaching thin walls or light cover. These simple but effective innovations not only increased hit probability, but reduced risk for assaulting troops entering bunkers, caves, or narrow passages. When shotgun teams coordinated with flamethrowers and smoke or concussion grenades, they could force defenders out or neutralize them in confined spaces, tasks too difficult for heavy artillery or aerial. Bombs, one of the Model 12's most notable contributions, was in clearing caves and bunkers, in limestone outposts and carved defenses at places like Iwo Jima, Peleliu, and Okinawa. Long-range fire lost effectiveness because of angles, turns, and multiple escape openings. Buckshot fired into a cave mouth or firing slit would ricochet inward, producing a lead storm that maimed, disoriented, or forced defenders to relocate, an effect that was both physical and psychological. Battlefield reports and veteran accounts often describe the ear-splitting noise and the chaotic sensation of pellets chattering inside confined spaces, and experience that frightened defenders as much as it injured them. Consequently, the shotgun reduced the need for large frontal assaults and helped limit casualties among assaulting forces. That said, the tactical effects of the M12 were not an unqualified panacea. They also introduced limits that commanders had to manage. Limited production numbers made universal issue impossible, so only selected positions and roles received the Model 12. Shotgun ammunition was heavier and bulkier than rifle rounds, meaning a shotgunner carried fewer rounds than a Garand or carbine rifleman. Maintaining resupply for shotgun teams was therefore important. As a result, shotguns were typically assigned to short-term, high-intensity tasks at hotspots rather than distributed across entire platoons. For the enemy, the appearance of the shotgun forced tactical adjustments. Japanese units sought to increase standoff distance during attacks, dig deeper trenches, layer defenses to blunt close-in weapons, or create obstacles that would halt attackers at rifle range. Some units experimented with improvised shields, wood planks, or thick canvas to try to stop buckshot, but such measures were rarely practical at scale due to material and time constraints. In short, the shotgun did not make attack impossible, but it made old methods costly. The psychological effect of the Model 12 should not be underestimated. The pump's clack and the sound of a shotgun's volley became a deterrent, reassurance for the defender, and a warning for the attacker. In many encounters, merely hearing a pump or nearby gunfire would cause an assault to slow or falter, buying defenders time to reorganize and call supporting fires. This real, tangible form of psychological warfare magnified the shotgun's tactical value beyond its purely physical effects. Finally, The M12 helped shape an adaptive tactical philosophy. Use the right tool for the job. Company and battalion commanders learned that not every situation required a rifle. Sometimes a wide pattern weapon was needed to protect a line. Sometimes specialized clearance teams with shotguns and flamethrowers were required, and sometimes different fires had to be interwoven to achieve the effect. This division of roles allowed U.S. forces to operate more flexibly, reduce casualties, and exploit industrial advantages by fielding mission-specific weapons when needed. In summary, the Winchester Model 12's tactical impact in the Pacific was a series of pragmatic changes: improved ambush response, stronger nighttime defense, specialized bunker clearing teams, and increased psychological deterrence. It did not alter the conduct of entire campaigns, but it changed how engagements were decided at close range, where survival often depended on an instant reaction and where a single weapon could make the difference between success and disaster. When recounting the clear advantages of the Winchester Model 12 in the Pacific War, it's easy to forget that any weapon, no matter how powerful, comes with inherent limitations and practical constraints. This section analyzes those limits, clarifies the M12's appropriate usage, and explains how commanders and soldiers had to adapt to use the weapon most effectively. First, the most significant limitation of the Model 12 is its restricted range. Buckshot, while devastating at close distances, loses both lethality and pattern density rapidly as range increases. Beyond 40-50 meters, the spread becomes ineffective, making the shotgun a less suitable choice compared to rifles or submachine guns with superior reach and accuracy. This made the M12 a specialized tool for close-quarters engagements, fortifications, caves, dense jungle lines, or landing corridors, where targets appeared within a few meters to a few dozen meters. On open terrain, plains, or long-range trenches, a shotgunner could be taken down before reaching effective range, so commanders had to carefully position shotguns where close contact was likely, avoiding any expectation that they could replace rifles in medium or long-range engagements. Another obvious but important limitation is the weapon's weight and ammunition bulk. 12-gauge shells are large and heavier than rifle magazines, limiting how many rounds a soldier could carry without compromising mobility and endurance on long marches. In practice, a shotgunner carried fewer rounds than a Garand or carbine rifleman, shortening continuous combat capability if resupply was delayed. On remote islands where supply lines were long and vulnerable, maintaining ammunition for shotgun teams became a critical logistical task. Without it, this potent weapon could become useless after only a few skirmishes. Third, maintenance and durability in humid, salty tropical conditions posed challenges. While the M12 was robustly designed, it was not impervious. Salt, high humidity, sand, and mud threatened its moving parts. In the Pacific, the weapon risked jamming, rusting, or failing without regular cleaning, oiling, and upkeep, tasks that required time and materials. During continuous operations, when soldiers needed to stay alert day and night, maintenance could be neglected, reducing reliability. Thus, the M12 performed best when assigned to units with clear maintenance protocols and support personnel, rather than issued haphazardly to troops on the move. Another limitation lies in the slam-fire mechanism, the feature that made the M12 famous, but also introduced risk. Allowing consecutive shots while holding the trigger produces tremendous firepower, but requires skill, steadiness, and alertness. In conditions of fatigue, panic, or injury, slam fire could result in poor control, rapid ammunition depletion, or accidental friendly fire in chaotic close quarters. It also accelerated barrel heating, wear, and potential component damage if used excessively without maintenance. Post-war civilian models often removed slam fire for safety reasons. In the military, while the feature remained valued, it necessitated careful training to ensure soldiers could use it safely and effectively. Additionally, penetration and effectiveness against fortified positions was limited. Buckshot excelled against personnel or light materials, but was less effective against small firing slits, iron doors, or thick wood, locations that could be partially shielded to reduce the shot's impact. Consequently, the shotgun could not single-handedly clear fortifications. It needed to be paired with flamethrowers, explosives, or supporting artillery to achieve full effect. In complex bunker systems such as Iwo Jima, the shotgun was often used only in the final stages after breaches had been made, to clear narrow passages, rather than as a standalone tool for direct frontal assault. Regarding its role, the Model 12 was clearly a specialized weapon, not a replacement for standard arms. Its relatively limited production, around 61,000 units in WWII, and distribution policies meant it was prioritized for point men in jungle patrols, bunker or cave clearing teams, nightline sentries, base or aircraft security units, and amphibious assault troops needing close quarters firepower. The Navy and Army Air Forces employed shotguns to guard installations and aircraft, tasks requiring heavy firepower in confined spaces. Because of this, selective use, training, deployment, and logistics for the shotgun had to be deliberate. It could not be handed to every soldier, but to specialists equipped with extra magazines and clear operational guidance. Enemy responses also highlighted its limited operational scope. Japanese forces attempted countermeasures, digging deeper trenches, adding defensive layers to extend engagement distances, using temporary shielding, or attacking along axes in daylight to force combat at longer ranges. Some units tried wood panels or thick fabric to block buckshot, but these solutions rarely worked on a large scale due to material constraints and practicality. In short, the shotgun made aggressive, close-in Japanese tactics costly, but it did not render every assault tactic ineffective. Opponents could adapt to mitigate shotgun risks. Another consideration is opportunity cost. Allocating shotguns to a campaign consumed industrial capacity, ammunition, and training. While the M12 was effective in limited scenarios, mass production would not necessarily yield proportionate tactical advantage compared to increasing rifles, grenade launchers, or artillery. Therefore, the U.S. military had to balance producing specialized weapons versus versatile, widely issued arms. The modest M12 production reflects that strategic choice. Finally, human factors mattered. Effective shotgun use required specialized training, low-angle firing, shooting by sound, coordination in confined spaces, or effectiveness could decline, and misuse could be dangerous. Integrating shotguns into a unit required commanders to understand strengths and limitations and assign the right personnel to the role. In skilled hands, the M12 was extremely effective. In untrained hands, it could quickly become a logistical burden and a safety risk. In summary, the appropriate role of the Winchester Model 12 was clear: a premier close-quarters tool, a deterrent for nighttime defense, and an indispensable aid for clearing caves and fortifications, but not a solution for every battlefield problem. Understanding and respecting its limitations in range, maintenance, ammunition, slam-fire safety, and training was essential to maximize its benefits and avoid negative consequences. By balancing capability with awareness of constraints, the shotgun served as a sharp supportive asset in the U.S. arsenal rather than a universal infantry replacement. Looking back at World War II, it's easy to focus on massive machines like the Sherman tank, Essex-class aircraft carriers, or B-29 bombers and their decisive roles on the battlefield. Yet, if we examine each engagement, every island, every bunker in the Pacific jungles, we see that seemingly small weapons like the Winchester Model 12 left a lasting mark, not only in U.S. military history, but also in modern combat thinking. The significance and legacy of the Model 12 do not lie in changing the overall course of the war, but in demonstrating how a specialized weapon used in the right context could achieve effectiveness far beyond its physical limits. First, in terms of historical importance, the Winchester Model 12 affirmed the value of close-range weapons in unconventional warfare environments. Upon entering the Pacific, U.S. forces faced enemies who relied not only on firepower, but also on bold charges, darkness, and fortified bunker systems. In that context, long-range rifles or heavy machine guns were not always the direct solution. The M12 filled that gap. It enabled soldiers to engage confidently at a few meters, disrupt banzai charges, and prevent enemy advances in the dark. Its presence on the front lines reassured fellow troops while undermining the enemy's belief that close-quarters assaults would always yield the advantage. Beyond combat performance, the M12 held psychological and social significance for soldiers. For young American troops experiencing their first jungle combat, carrying a weapon capable of instantly stopping an enemy at close range was a major morale boost. The characteristic pumping sound, the deep, thunderous report, and the destructive effect of buckshot reinforced the belief that they possessed a reliable, life-saving tool. Conversely, for Japanese soldiers, the shotgun became a source of dread. Many memoirs recount that merely hearing the pump's whistle was enough to make attackers hesitate. This shows that the weapon inflicted not only physical damage, but also psychological impact. In a broader perspective, The Model 12 reflected the adaptability of the U.S. military. During World War II, American forces were known for rapidly adjusting tactics and technology to suit circumstances. From improving armored vehicles and developing mobile artillery to producing specialized small arms like shotguns, all demonstrated the philosophy that a one-weapon-fits-all approach was not always optimal. Sometimes a highly specialized tool became the key to unlocking battlefield challenges. The rapid production, training, and deployment of the Model 12 exemplified this flexibility. Its significance extends to the post-war legacy. After 1945, the U.S. military did not immediately retire the shotgun. On the contrary, lessons learned in the Pacific were applied to later conflicts. During the Korean War, American troops again carried the M12 or other shotgun models to cope with mountainous terrain and sudden attacks in fog or nighttime conditions. In the Vietnam War, shotguns became indispensable in Southeast Asian jungles, where Viet Cong guerrillas employed close-range tactics in confined terrain. Shotguns like the Ithaca 37, Remington 870, and Winchester Model 12 became familiar companions to U.S. infantry. Thus, the M12's legacy extended well beyond World War II. In military doctrine, the M12 reinforced the understanding that modern combat occurs not only across open plains or distant skies, but also in extremely confined asymmetric spaces. This insight laid the foundation for the close quarters battle (CQB) concept in Western military thought. Lessons from bunker clearing and jungle fighting informed later urban combat, counterterrorism operations, and asymmetric warfare. Today, when discussing combat indoors, on ships or in cities, shotguns still play a vital role, a direct legacy of the M12's experience in the Pacific. Another aspect is cultural and social legacy. The M12 did not remain only in veterans' memories, but entered American popular culture. The image of soldiers wielding shotguns in jungles or aboard ships became iconic in films, books, and video games. In the American consciousness, the Model 12 symbolized practical, reliable, and trustworthy, living up to its pre-war nickname, the perfect repeater. Industrially, its success paved the way for later pump-action and semi-automatic shotguns, solidifying the shotgun's place in both military and civilian contexts. Notably, the Model 12's legacy also lies in technological development. Experiences in adapting firearms to battlefield conditions, enhancing rust resistance, simplifying mechanisms, or maintaining slamfire capability provided lessons for subsequent generations of military shotguns. The Ithaca 37 inherited many of the M12's features, especially in compactness and rapid fire, while the Remington 870 became renowned for durability and ease of maintenance, setting a standard for military shotguns in the latter half of the 20th century. Without the M12's foundational influence, these refinements would have been harder to achieve. Additionally, the M12 offered lessons in logistics and weapons allocation. It demonstrated that a modern military must balance mass-issued arms with specialized tools. Millions of shotguns were unnecessary. Tens of thousands issued to the right personnel for the right mission produced a combat effectiveness far beyond their numbers. This philosophy continued to shape U.S. supply and armament strategies, diversity in weapons, yet specialized tools for specific scenarios. Finally, the deepest legacy of the Winchester Model 12 may be its lesson on the human-weapon interaction. The M12 was not smart, lacking electronics or guided ammunition, but it acted as a direct extension of the soldier, fast, intuitive, and effective. It required confidence, reflexes, and experience from the user, rewarding them with greater survival chances in harsh conditions. Across generations, from Guadalcanal to Hue, Okinawa to Fallujah, the image of soldiers with shotguns endures, symbolizing the enduring bond between humans and simple, effective tools. In summary, the significance and legacy of the Winchester Model 12 go far beyond its role as a shotgun in a single war. It exemplifies the adaptability of the U.S. military, the value of specialized weapons in asymmetric warfare, the importance of psychological impact and logistics, and laid the groundwork for CQB doctrine and technological development. Its legacy lives not only in museums and histories, but continues to resonate in modern operations where U.S. and allied forces still carry shotguns, a reminder that sometimes victory comes not from the largest weapon, but from the right tool at the right moment.